This is a fun one. Project A119. Woo. So, what exactly is this? Not a mine. Not a mine. Okay. That's here. And 1949. There's a foundation called ARF, or the Armor Research Foundation. They were studying the behavior, the idea of setting off nukes in space. Sounds cool. Late 50s. There were 10 scientists that were put into a team. They were to study the nuclear detonation, or rather the visibility of a nuclear detonation on the face of the moon, and also do a whole bunch of tests on the side. Shoot the moon, exactly. Now, of course, the main idea here was to impress or intimidate the Soviets. But there was also the PDF I linked in here. It is a big, huge write-up of everything they were going to do, planning on, etc. A whole bunch of things. Like, if you want to really dig into it, there is a lot of reading in there. It is interesting. And even partway through there, they do mention seismology. In fact, I had a prof who was aware of this before it was declassified. Because I remember him telling us about this when I was in college, and he said that he was aware of this from, where was he aware of this from? He said he knew somebody who was on the original team. So it was interesting because this is where I first heard about it when I was an undergrad, and it stuck in my head, and I did not know its name for a number of years. So they even have a point in the PDF where they say, hey, by the way, if we proceed with this, while you're deciding on a payload for the nuke, we need to get a seismogram out there on the surface of the moon so we can actually record the seismic activity. And this was kind of like, they were like, well, we don't know what the guts of the moon look like. If we just have a single source response, we can look at that and figure out some stuff. And they have a whole thing getting into it like, here's what we know of Earth. Here's what we're expecting of the moon, etc. I mean, the moon is largely tectonically dead. I mean, almost entirely, I believe. I mean, it doesn't have like the whole liquid outer core. It doesn't have anything in the way of like a asthenosphere for plates to glide across. But they pretty much say that in there, that they say, this is what we believe the shape is going to be. They even go into some stuff like, here's how a seismogram works. They also decided to set off, the nuke would be set off on what is called the terminator line. And that is actually the boundary between the light side and the dark side of the moon. And they were going to set it off there for optimum visibility, supposedly. Yeah, just need once to play. So after these documents were put together, they decided to just kind of axe the idea, because they kind of like, you know what? We've slept on it. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. I don't think we need to do this, guys. There were also bans and treaties put in place in the 60s that effectively said, hey, don't do that shit in space. It's like, okay, fine. Spoil sport. And almost all of the reports were burned in the 80s. So, I have a PDF here. Most of the reports were burned. It was classified. So that begs the question, how did we find out about this? The government doesn't like declassifying stuff. It likes just shoving it underneath like the table leg of underneath a table leg so it doesn't wobble and forgetting about it, you know? Well, there's a little bit of context here. In the late 90s, there is a fella named Kie Davidson. He is writing a biography for a scientist who had recently passed away. And this scientist, in his younger years, he was actually on this project science team. And what Davidson found, he found a paper trail during this guy's doctoral student days. In fact, he found a scholarship application from this student who was trying to push for financial aid, scholarship, etc. And he's like, by the way, here's a project I've been working on. We're going to be setting off a bomb on the moon. He basically went into summary of a classified project in an application. So a little bit of a national security breach. He was dead, though. So it's like, well, that's interesting. I guess I'll write about it in the biography. So biography's written, goes out the door. It's done. Information's left in it. And then people read the biography because this was a higher profile scientist. And then, lo and behold, the people who were still alive, who were part of the team, including one of them who was like a NASA ex-executive, they came out, they confirmed it. They said, this was disgusting. This should never have been a thing. And then afterward, not long afterward, the documents were declassified. The government never confirms it, but it's like, you declassified this. You basically confirmed it already. So, who exactly was the scientist involved with this that accidentally gave this up? Thank you, Carl Sagan. Interesting times. Interesting times. Yep. Also, his advisor was actually, I forget his first name. That's the man's name. Yeah, his advisor or his doctoral advisor was Dr. Kuiper, who was also involved in a lot of space exploration. You may have heard like of the Kuiper Belt and things like that. They were both involved on the project. So, yeah, interesting. I think what the heck was his first name? He passed in the 70s, though. So, anyway. That is it for the last man-made topic. Everything else is pure natural geology, baby. Before I jump into that, any questions, comments, concerns? There is not, in fact, a field trip for this sucker. Big stretch. Ooh. Feynman put out some hilarious edge of very classified shit in his biography as well. Doing great. Thank you. No field trips to the moon. I'm sorry. We do not have enough suits to go around.